unless you've lived in this town your whole life, you can tell me something I don't already know about it. You can just zip your lip. Trina's dad took a sip of his coffee. Miss Kitty was still fuming. You just wait until you set foot in that house. We spent last night there and we're still standing, he said in his usual playful way. You spent a night there? Whispered Miss Kitty. The hand squeezing the spatula dropped to her side. Did anything strange happen? Trina's ears pricked up. Strange. How about lights that flickered, and if they heard what you said, and the chimney flew, and the front door that shut, and it felt like it, the furnace that turned on by itself, the toilet that flushed on its own, not to mention the strange feeling that someone else was in there with him. But Trina kept her mouth shut. She didn't need to add any more fuel to Miss Kitty's fire. Nope, not a zip, her dad said. Well, that's pretty strange by itself, Miss Kitty said, turning back to her cooking. When I was a kid, we used to play a game called The Dare. We placed our bets, and whoever spent a whole night at Goldenrod would win the money. Hash browns? Sure, Trina's dad said. No, thank you, said Trina. Miss Kitty slapped a slab of frozen potatoes on the griddle. We put all the money in a coffee can, and that was the prize. We'd just keep getting bigger and bigger till it was up over $300, which was a lot of money when I was a kid. It still is, she said, giving the hash browns a hefty flip. I'll bet every kid in town tried to spend the night there. But nobody ever made it through the whole night. Trina thought back to the bill on the kitchen counter. No wonder the cleaners came all the way from Davenport. Anyone who lives in New Royal would be afraid to go in the house. What happened? Trina whispered. What happened? Miss Kitty said. What didn't happen? With that, 2 eggs sunny side up flipped from Miss Kitty's spatula onto a plain white plate, followed by a pile of bacon and hash browns. Then she stacked up Trina's pancakes. If you want my advice, she said, setting the plates down in front of them so hard that the silverware clattered, don't take anything for granted out there. Whatever you think that house isn't, it is. When Miss Kitty stared into Trina's eyes, Trina stared back. She wondered if Miss Kitty could tell Trina believed every word she said. Funny, there's no sign of vandalism with all those kids breaking in, Trina's dad said, winking at Trina while he poured ketchup all over his fried eggs. Miss Kitty refilled his coffee cup. You mean to tell me you don't know why? Trina felt bold enough to speak up. After all, she and Miss Kitty had something in common, fear of Goldenrod, because the house scared them away before they could do anything. Or the real truth, which she kept to herself. The invisible old lady wouldn't let them stay. Smart girl, Miss Kitty said, nodding. Then she paused. Hey, if you're so smart, how come you're not in school today? Trina gagged down a bite of her pancake. School? Already? Miss Kitty nodded. It started last week. My granddaughter Charlotte's in the 5th grade. So I know when school starts and when it doesn't. Last week, Trina slumped on her stool. But it's not even Labor Day yet, she said. As welling tears stung her eyes, she blinked hard. She didn't want to cry about school. She didn't want to cry about anything, but there was nothing she hated more than being the new kid in a class, and now she was going to have to be a whole week late, which made it 10 times worse. Where is the school? Her dad asked. Miss Kitty switched off the fan and started scraping the griddle with her spatula. Straight up Main, east side. She pointed in the opposite direction of the way they came into town. Past Millie's grocery store and up the hill. By the cemetery. You can't miss it. Trina set her fork down at the side of her plate. Come on, Pop, she said, tugging on his arm. You have to take me to school right now. Miss Kitty shook her head. Not so fast there, young lady. You're going to eat those pancakes first. Thank you for tuning in for Chapter 3. I'm excited to see what happens next in chapter 4 of The Secret of Goldenrod.